My name is Karen D. Brame. I am a cultural commentator, archivist. I work in special collections, curating and preserving African-American culture at Dayton Metro Library. And I am an artist and an educator.
I'm Corey Owens. I'm the chair of the Huber Heights Culture and Diversity Citizen Action Commission, and also an educator in higher education.
Hi, my name is Eric Richardson. I'm a member of the Culture, Diversity, Citizens Action Commission here in Huber Heights, and I'm glad to be here and looking forward to our discussion on Juneteenth today.
Hi, I'm Christy Lynn Trotter. I'm a member of the Culture and Diversity Citizen Action Commission as well, and I'm looking forward to participating in our discussion about Juneteenth.
Well, all right, so before we have a discussion, because I do have several questions to ask you all. So before we do that, I think I'm just going to give like a brief background of what is Juneteenth. And so first of all, Juneteenth as a word is a portmanteau or a mixture of June and 19th. And so they put the two together, Juneteenth. So that's how that comes about. And Juneteenth itself is a holiday that has been federally celebrated for the past 4 years as we're going into the 5th year. This was made official by President Joe Biden when he signed it after it had been an act that had been passed through Congress. And itself is a holiday. So just to give you a little bit of background, if you do recall, the American Civil War went on from 1861 to 1865. But as this is going on, one of the acts that President Abraham Lincoln did do, not necessarily to free people who had been enslaved, but he did it to preserve the Union, and that is signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation is September 22nd, 1862, to take place January 1st, 1863. And so if the South, also known as the Confederacy, had not succumbed to that and agreed to that proclamation, then this will still take effect for the South. Now it has to be very clear that when President Lincoln does sign this Emancipation Proclamation, it does not impact those who are enslaved in the Union. So they're still in slavery. So, you know, sometimes people think that people who are African Americans who have been enslaved, they're just in the South. That is not true. There are people who are enslaved in the North, and the most notable place is actually New York City. Outside of Charleston in South Carolina, where more than 80% of those who are of African descent who are enslaved come through Gaston's Wharf, they're also going to come through New York. So outside of Charleston, the largest population of persons who are enslaved is in New York City. So that I just want to know. When we look at this, when President Lincoln signs this, and of course the Confederacy does not acknowledge or honor the Emancipation Proclamation, by the time they lose, they end up losing. When we look at a timeline, persons who have been enslaved in the Confederacy did not know that they would have been able to have been free. And so then when we start looking at like the math and doing the numbers, by the time that June 19th, 1865, General Major Gordon Granger comes in with Union troops to enforce in Galveston, Texas, that the Emancipation Proclamation is to take place. The amazing thing, and not in a good way, is that these people had been enslaved for almost 3 years. And so when we talk about celebrating Juneteenth, that's a major reason why we celebrate. You know, unfortunately, they did not know when Granger does come in and he's with troops who are armed and he's enforcing this. You know, you can imagine the disbelief. Like, is this real? And so, you know, some of the things I want to talk to you all about to get your insight, because there's just such a history that is so worthy for everybody, every age, every race, ethnicity, citizenship status. There's a reason for us to celebrate in Juneteenth, you know, that concept of freedom and unity. So, you know, I want to start out first, like, what do you think can explain why, you know, it took so long for them to hear that they would have been freed almost 3 years prior. What do you think is a reason or are reasons that they had such a delay in getting the news?
I mean, I think without getting too political, right? We kind of see this kind of unfold in current 2026, right? With the declaration of an election was stolen, right? So even in 2026 with social media and proven facts and Congress approved and things have been signed off and ratified, and it's still, there's this still belief that since I didn't get my way, I'm not going to adhere to these rules, these policies. So to your point, I think the Confederate was like, okay, we lost, but we're not going to adhere to this rule. And so in a sense, I see it the same way. Like, you know, we are 6 years removed from the 2020 election, and there is still a segment of the population that wants to believe something was stolen, no matter what's done. So, and this is an age where every information is quick. You can get instantaneously. There's no horseback. You don't have to wait for somebody to ride through cavalcade from wherever from the north all the way to the south. And so I think it was just a staunch belief in, we are not going to adhere to this rule signed by the president or not, or whoever is ratifying things, all these things at this time. Same process we go through today, but I think that they just were stubborn. They didn't want to adhere. I think they enjoyed the labor, indentured servitude. I think that, and they knew that because word already was going to travel slow, they're not going to know if we don't say anything. And so the only reason they knew is because somebody came down and said, hey, this is the law. Like, whether you like it or not, this is what's going to happen. So it's crazy, not really crazy, but I think it's just odd how even in modern day we can still see, with all the technology, all the everything, something very similar has unfolded to like that in our modern day, in our current present.
I think it's key, like you mentioned, Corey, I think the best thing that you can do to hinder a person is hold them back from education, from knowledge of something, right? So that was the big deal, right? Let's keep the knowledge away, right, from this group of people that they actually have this right, right? Because there's power in me keeping this knowledge. And you still have, I think, those things that happen today. How can we fight knowledge going forth? Because unfortunately, when you know something, what do we say? When you know better, you do better. Right? So unfortunately, when you know things, then you don't have to put up with certain things, or you don't allow certain things. So to your point, I think that was the big hindrance there, is how do we keep this knowledge so that these people don't want to make a change, or understand that they have this opportunity, that they no longer have to be bound by our system.
Well, my take on it is that, the day Christopher Columbus set foot on this land, it's just been chaos ever since, I feel like. Power, greed, selfishness, disregard for basic humanity, I think has just been so far overlooked throughout this nation's history. And, history keeps repeating itself over and over. And it's, because of complacency and because of, indifference. I wish people, in so many different situations, I wish somebody would have had, the courage to be less indifferent and, maybe things wouldn't have happened the way that they did, but unfortunately, I think this is an example
Mhm.
of that.
Well, you know, and since I just said that question, so I'm going to ask you all to put yourselves in a position, if you can imagine, here's Major Gordon Granger that's on the balcony at Ashton Villa giving this announcement, and you hear it, and it's real. What would you do? Would you stay there? Would you stay? Would you go look for who your kinfolk are? I used to ask that to my students because we were talking earlier about Central State, and I would ask my students at Central what would they do, and I want to be interested to hear what you all would say. Would you stay when you hear this in Gallatin?
I think
Would you look for your
you know,
family?
Karen, it's a good question. Here in 2026, right? Knowing what I know, right? It's gonna be a different response, but I think if I was them at that time.
Yeah, at that time.
And I don't know anything different. I think maybe you may be afraid because this is all that I know, right? Okay, so you're telling me I'm free. Okay, now what do I do? Where do I live? You know what I'm saying? How do I get around? How do I take care of my family? You know what I'm saying? That now a lot of these responsibilities that we have today, I gotta do these things and I'm in a world where people hate me because of my color. People look down on me because of my color. Because a lot of them never had an education. So now people look down on me because I don't have an education. I probably don't speak well. You know what I'm saying? My appearance is not as good as it probably should be. I'm not groomed. You know what I'm saying? So I don't necessarily fit into everyday society. So I'm thinking I'd probably be a little intimidated, afraid, almost kind of like, you know, I don't want to make it a biblical thing, but kind of like the Israelites when they were, you know, free. They like, well, we don't know what to do out here. Maybe we might need to go back over here where Pharaoh is, because at least we knew we was going to eat. We knew where we was going to stay. So I'm thinking that might be where I'm at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Thank you.
I'm with Eric. I think that because you've never had to strategically think, you don't know how to strategically think. You don't know how to mobilize. You don't know how to empower. I mean, you have had maybe some examples. If I'm a slave, if I'm in Texas, there's probably been a few people I've seen that maybe tried to run away, maybe got away, but maybe got caught. And I saw what happened when they came back.
The consequences.
Right. So that's what I said. Like, so there's not, and so I'm thinking like, because I've never had to strategically plan how to live, what do I do? Now, I think they had a skill set to survive, but I don't even think they knew how to monetize it. So yes, like they were the laborers, so they knew how to till land, they knew how to sharecrop, they knew how to do any type of agricultural industry because they were the ones doing it, but they didn't know how to profit off of it to make a living.
How do I market it?
How
much does it cost?
Well, not only that too, to people who are defiant and don't want you to be free, who feel that they should not have to pay you, regardless what these people say, because at some point they're going to leave, and now what? And so some of the things that you end up seeing is that there were a number of people who stayed, but some were like, I don't care, any place is better than here, I'm about to figure some things out, you know?
Yeah.
Because, and those are all very real reactions that you're having, because again, you know, in a system, and you said education too, earlier, in a system that has denied, I mean, not only just, oh, you can't do it legally, but has a whole system of violence that's behind it if you can read.
Right.
You know, if you can count in so many instances. And so, you know, the great thing about the people who had lived in Galveston as African Americans who stayed, you know, it was like, okay, so they actually celebrated Juneteenth the next year after they found out, right? And they're finding out and them wanting to do this, the people who they were now working for as employees, they did not want to give them Juneteenth off. And so what ends up happening with many of them, and especially led by a gentleman, Reverend Jack Yates, they pulled their money together as a black church, black congregation members, bought tracts of land, most notably Emancipation Park, still in existence, still celebrated. And so that's how they have to get around things. So like you said, you know, this is there's more than a learning curve. It's like a mile long, you know.
Right.
It's a mile long, like how are we gonna do this? But for those who stayed, that's what happened. And it got to be amazing when they came, and I'll get to that in just a second, but they came for Juneteenth celebrations dressed in their best. And there are also accounts that as the celebrations go on, there are a number of things that are included in Juneteenth celebrations. So there's always a prayer and praise to God and the ancestors that freedom came. There's always the reading of General Order Number 3, Major Granger had read from the balcony, Ashtabula. There's always the reading of the Emancipation Proclamation by President Lincoln. These are, like, there is no Juneteenth celebration without those, period. It's great that we are going to celebrate our freedom, but there is a structure, there's a foundation, there's that education piece. This has to occur, otherwise we're not having Juneteenth. And so they set that tone. The singing of spirituals, of course it's Texas, so barbecued meats. Look, the color red, and red is associated, of course, for those who had different African spiritual systems. So they're looking at for Shango, who had red, so sometimes you'll see that. But red also representing the sacrifice, and blood is usually symbolic of that. And so you'll see red play out in Juneteenth celebrations, from the red sauce that's on the barbecue, for the red beans. Sometimes you'll see red beans and rice. You will not have any kind of celebration if you didn't have a red punch or a red pop, which is like, what flavor is that? Red is a color. You know, is it strawberry? Is it raspberry? Is it cherry? I don't know. And so red pop, red punch. Of course, you have red velvet cake. And people are wearing, like I said, their best. There are also, as time goes on, reenactments that people will show, especially if you were near a body of water near the river, the kind of reenactment of how you were and when you had been enslaved, and, you know, your ragged clothes, as we were saying, you know, you may not look your best. But then once you've gone through the river of emancipation, the river of freedom, and you come out and you're looking your best, and it's like, what? So you saw these reenactments come out. You also saw, especially in Texas, especially at Galveston Park, Reverend Jack Yates' daughters. There are beautiful photographs of some carriages. They're decorated all with all these flowers and everything, and they have the competitions and the pageantry. It was just amazing. You had African American men dressed as Union soldiers. Some of them were Union soldier veterans that had come. And so, you know, it's amazing when we talk about the history, that homage, that how far we've come, you know, enslavement situation, a war situation, a reconstruction period, you know. And so my next thing would be for me to ask you all, what do you all think is essential to the Juneteenth celebration?
I think, to me, the biggest thing is the education of it. Because I'll have to admit, growing up, I never heard of Juneteenth.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what Juneteenth was. I want to say 2020 or something like that is when I started hearing about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually went to a celebration, and it just blew my mind of what really happened, what was really, you know, because I knew, okay, slavery had to end
Mm-hmm.
at some point in time, but it just never really clicked and really came together until I went to that celebration. And then it started to make a whole lot of sense to me.
Mhm.
Then it intrigued me.
Mhm.
And then now I want to try to reach out, okay, how can I learn more information? How can I get more information? So that was good. And then we had our commission that was here, and then we said, hey, this should be one of the initiatives that we take up to try to help bring
Shout out
some
your
awareness to it, to the holiday,
Mhm.
and bring some education.
I think that's amazing. That's amazing. And I think it's amazing that you all are still doing this, as Corey was saying, the attack that is on culture, the attack that is on education, the attack that is on freedom, the attack that's on unity, and so I commend you all for doing that so much. Did y'all have anything you wanted to add?
I think the education is important, but not gonna lie, food is important. Anytime there's a celebration, if there's no food, what do we celebrate?
We we celebrating?
Right. Oh, this is a prayer ritual?
Right, what's going on?
But and I think that I think it is. I think it should be treated like a true celebration, like we do anything else. It should be fun. It should be educational. It should be inspirational. It should be but you gotta have food, and I think nothing brings people together like food. And so
That's exactly one of the main things, like when you study the history of Juneteenth, and almost like I said, the types of foods that are there. And please don't let me forget fish, because of course, a lot of the celebrations are near bodies of water. But there's also activities from rodeo and cowboys, those types of reenactment. There are singing, there's poetry, spoken word, in more contemporary times. And I want to say, as Juneteenth, ends up being practiced, we see, and here's one of the reasons why you probably didn't hear about it until recently. So, like, the history of Juneteenth, it really is very much like Texas. And so thanks to people, and most notably, Al Edwards, and I have a link on here, so when you want to do that. But Al Edwards is a congressman out of Texas, worked for years to get Juneteenth to be passed, and it was passed as a state holiday in Texas. And so then with people like Barbara Rose Collins, who also is a politician, rest in peace to both of them. She's out of Michigan. She activated to try to work to get that to be a federal holiday. You have grassroots activists that includes Lula Briggs Galloway, the one who is still alive is Opal Lee and Ben Haith. And so Opal Lee had been up for a Nobel Peace Prize, had been nominated for that. And she is in her 90s, I would say at this point. And I should know better, so I should do the math for that. Oh, we are in 26. She's about to be 100 years old, because she's born October 7th, 1926. Wow. And so, so when she was nominated, she was in her 90s, but she's very much, she was literally walking like across states to call attention to how important Juneteenth is. And then Ben Haith, who I just referenced, he's the person who is the original designer of the Juneteenth flag. You have people that say another person or people helped them, or they, what was the word? Because I thought that was very disrespectful. It was kind of like they refined it, and I'm like, she's not African American. I mean, she refined what? He already came up with it and all of his symbols, So it was really kind of like that's disrespectful to say. But Ben Haith, Opal Lee, Lula Briggs Galloway, Barbara Rose Collins, and especially Al Edwards are the key people to make Juneteenth be what it is. And so with that activism of it being passed as a state holiday and then ultimately as a federal holiday, one of the things that also why you may not hear it is because when many African Americans during the Great Migration of the 1930s to about the 1960s. So once they're leaving out of these southern western parts and they're settling in these urbanized areas of Ohio, Indiana, so notably like Chicago, of course, Cincinnati, if we look at Michigan, Detroit. So as they're coming here, these are spaces that don't know anything about Juneteenth. So if you are employed or decide, well, I would like to take off for Juneteenth, they're like, what? You better be at work. You know? And so that's how we see some of it kind of, die down. Now by the 1960s, especially with many Black groups, activists, grassroots activists, as well as Black Power, Black Arts Movement individuals, you start to see it, especially after Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King becomes more prominent. And when you start seeing marches, you start to see people in the late 1960s and 70s with Juneteenth like pins. And so by the time of the 90s, which I call a new Black conscious movement, you hear it being brought up again. And so it kind of makes sense that you end up having, by the time President Biden signed it, that there are more people aware. But they're definitely not aware like a 4th of July, because there's no main push to want to talk about people being enslaved, because then there's another conversation. Well, are there going to be reparations? How do we make this right? And in a country that has even denied, we can look at, there's been a big push, and of all places, Texas, that has wanted to take out that slavery even occurred. They put forth suggestions for textbooks like, they were interns. I was like, interns? People get to leave an internship. You're not, calling on, I'm taking every part of your humanity from your body to who you give birth to can you keep them? Am I recognizing you're married? Am I letting you practice your own spiritual things? Am I stopping you from becoming educated? There's so many halts on life for people who have been enslaved. And so these are the things that I think also comes with why slavery is not being taught. And people will say, oh, it's critical race theory. And I'm like, but that's not a theory, those are facts. And, when we're now in a situation of what can be taught, what can't be taught, what can be in public spaces as holding in terms of libraries or cultural centers, those things become really important to make sure that we do, talk about it. And when we talk about it, we learn more, we share more, we can build that unity, because yes, those things happen, but we can move forward when we make the appropriate accommodations so that we all can. So it's that conversation that it's not equality, it's equity. And in equity, we do the right thing, or we're trying to do the right thing. Which then brings me to, because a thing of equity, I think, but this is my own personal thing. So Juneteenth also is called, by some, Jubilee Day and Freedom Day. It's been called Emancipation Day, and I'm like, stop. It's not Emancipation Day. And the reason why it's not Emancipation Day is because Emancipation Day is September 22nd. That is the day that President Lincoln signed, right? So September 22nd, very different from June 19th, different years, right? And so because of the work I do and special collections and all of that, so I'm always excited to read, and you all had last year different types of things that dealt with emancipation, so that you borrowed, thankfully, from the library. So things that talk about the symbols of freedom and articles. And so if you're wondering, what were they celebrating here in Ohio? Because Juneteenth is an actual indigenous Texas thing. They were celebrating, if you can believe it, they were celebrating Emancipation Day here in Dayton, Ohio. I know I'm sitting in rights, but I'm just using it. So, but here in Dayton, Ohio, as early as 1871. That's less than a decade that you all have heard this in Ohio being a free state. But this is amazing. You've got yourselves together. There are articles that talk about how the colored population comported themselves beautifully. Here's all the things that happened at their celebration. And so that's in quote unquote white newspapers like Dayton Daily Journal. But by the 1900s, probably 1920s, there was a colored newspaper, a black newspaper, that was called the Dayton Forum. It served Dayton, Springfield, Cincinnati, and Columbus. But they're full-page ads of celebrating Emancipation Day.
I think we can learn so much from the past. Because I think we can take what happened. I believe we can always improve and make things a lot better. But I think we can really understand where people come from,
Mhm.
where their thought process is based on history. I do believe that. Not to say you can't change a thought,
Mhm.
but I think the foundation of a thought comes from somewhere. So with that being said, I would like for people to walk away with, okay, what is the history? What happened actually on Juneteenth?
Mhm.
Okay, I got that, I know that. And guess what? If I have a neighbor of mine that's black and he wants to celebrate Juneteenth, okay, I want to celebrate Juneteenth with you.
Right.
You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Let's learn more about it,
Uh-huh.
and then let's figure out how we can learn from that event and unify together to make this world a much better place than where it is. We don't have to stay here, but it's okay to learn from this
We have
so
to.
that we can make some corrective steps to be a much better nation and a people, a much better community, is what I would like to see.
Well, and I definitely agree with that in terms of, as the great Frederick Douglass, as an abolitionist, as an orator, as an author, the most photographed, if you did not know, the most photographed person of the 20th century, more than Abraham Lincoln, more than Robert E. Lee, but Frederick Douglass was. And as he said, if you don't study the past and learn from it, you're going to be doomed to repeat it.
Mhm.
And it's important to have those conversations, even if we may feel like, I don't want you to blame me, well, I'm not blaming you, but you also can't deny that these things have occurred and you benefited from it, or these things occurred and this group didn't. There has to be, as I was saying earlier, some type of equity. That's how you really move forward. Because it's not enough if somebody says, oh, you owe all this money. Well, wait, reparations is more than money. Reparations also includes institutions, it also includes, how do we have our relationships and move forward. So, yeah, absolutely, like you said, how are we going to be able to do that so we can build unity, true unity, too. Mhm.
I think if it were me, building on that, I think, I don't think there's anything wrong with just celebrating and having a good time. I think if everybody walks away having a good time, celebrating the history, why we're there, knowing why we're there, because, there's nothing wrong with celebrating another culture's freedom or independence or
even, yeah.
or whatever it is they try, whatever. So for us, for African Americans, it's celebrating. Hey, we came here one way. We were given our freedom. Let's just celebrate it. To your point, right? Yes, we got to know where we started because we got to know why we're doing it, and it doesn't diminish. It doesn't have to diminish because it's just really just eye opening. Because even I think, like he said, like there are some black people who are still learning about what this is. So it's not like there's this magical chest that we just have all this information. No, not everybody knows. We're still learning about certain things they were celebrating and why they were celebrating. I'm learning even while I'm sitting here about, I didn't know anything about the river. So you know what I'm saying? Like, so it's like, it's a time to learn, but guess what? We're gonna do it in a way, and maybe it's because I'm an educator, right? I think the best way to make something stick is to make it fun. So if coming together, having food, having music, but also incorporating the educational piece into it, it doesn't take away from who you are or what your struggle was or how you participated in it, good, bad, or indifferent, whatever. Like, let's just walk away, have a good time, and say, you know what, we learned something, we had a good time, and how can we make next year better?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
I think I would want people to take away a willingness to be understanding and empathetic, and to be willing to learn and to celebrate alongside. I would want people to go out and educate themselves. What is this federal holiday I get the day off for?
Right.
Oh, it's a black holiday. Oh, it's a black person holiday. Okay, but I still get paid for it. No, it's so much more than that. We cannot rewrite history. But I think we are easily manipulated to what history was. And I think we do a disservice. You know, it's not like this is, 1984. And actually it kind of is. We've got people that want to rewrite headlines.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Rewrite,
well, now, I would
You know,
stop you in the area.
yeah, the main character in that book, he had to rewrite news headlines so that it was, no, that might be perceived as what's going on, but we can stop that as a collective group of people if we just educate and we're willing to have conversations.
Mhm.
You know, be willing to have conversations, ask questions. And, having served on a commission with you guys, and I would say this with anybody too, I will celebrate right alongside you. And I will. And why can't more people be like that? Well, it's because they're scared.
Mhm.
They're scared of what they've been taught, which is 90% wrong. They're scared of, learning something that is not, okay, no, it's not their holiday, but, Jewish people celebrate their holidays. Do you still support those? Yeah, there's no difference. We can't keep making things, fit into these little boxes of indifference because we don't want to deal with it or acknowledge it.
Yeah.
So it comes along with, I think the education, the empathy. It costs nothing to be empathetic to a collective group of people that struggled in this country wholeheartedly at one time. And at the hands of the white people, we have to say that. At the hands of the white people, it's not pretty, but it happened. But we're here now, and we can make a difference if people are willing to embrace that education and willingness to celebrate.
Absolutely.
Anything can be solved over a good steak.
That's a good
Except
point.
to the It'll be like, where's the salad?
Medium well, please.
She said, I would take the Pine Club, please. Yeah, so that really was it, except to say, for this Juneteenth celebration, is there something specific that you are going to do, like with either yourself, your loved ones, or anything? Is there some aspect? So if it's something, because you talk about food, is there something like a special part of the meal, like, okay, I have to have red velvet cake here. I have to have strawberry pie. Is it going to be something, because even though you have yours in Dayton, of course there's the Juneteenth celebration at 11th Pavilion, but Will Smith, who's really politically active in the city of Dayton, and not only the city of Dayton, of government, Dayton, just as a city. But we were just talking, so there's supposed to be a type of Juneteenth celebration that even includes I'm saying cowboys, Lord.
Rodeo.
But rodeo, yes. So there's supposed to be that as something. So is there anything in particular you're either going to do for Juneteenth 2026 or would like to do or would want to see done in maybe 2027?
So I think in 2027, what I think we should probably take a thing to do is try to pick definitely an item, a food item, a drink item, a dessert item, and feature those things. I think that would be something good for us. Because like I said, I think what Juneteenth has done for us is, I believe each year we've been able to add a little more and a little more and a little more and get a little better at the celebration. This year's focus for us, because of the division that we see, just in society today.
Let's just be
What our focus this year is, how do we bring everybody under the same tent? So that's kind of been our focus for this year, is to follow along with the theme of freedom and unity, with a heavy hand on the unity.
Yes, yes.
How do we bring our community, and what we want to try to see happen is, if we can show folks here in our community of Huber Heights how we can live and gel together. We are one of the most diverse we are the most diverse suburb in the Miami Valley area.
Mhm.
So with that, we want to be the ones to set the example of what that looks like.
Mhm.
So this year, that is our focus on how do we make this unity piece look. And then I think for next year, the different things that we want to do with our commission is how now we begin to focus on different other ethnic groups, is what we want to do, to bring people together, but definitely add those different food components, a dessert, a food, and a drink. Make sure.
That would be red velvet cake, barbecue, and red pop, or red punch. Because some people say they don't drink pop, but either way.
We have a barbecue piece this year.
Yeah, there
We
you
don't have
go.
red velvet cake, but we'll have a red velvet cake when I have the drink.
Yeah, those are real popular. I mean, and of course with African American Southerners, I mean, things from hummingbird cake to coconut cake, those are all just like traditional households too, so, yeah, that's exciting. And like I said, there's always the fish because of where they were located, and but barbecue is like top gun number one.
100%.
100%. Whether it's chicken to steak to hamburgers, hot dogs in more modern time.
Yeah. Great. I'm excited. Can't wait.
I'm
Can't
excited.
get here fast enough.
Looking forward.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thank you all. Yeah, thank you all for asking
Thank you.
me.
No problem, sir.
Thank you.